All right, guys, on today, I'm excited because of the fact we have a very good topic before us. We're going to talk about Zoom webinar essentials. That's what we're going to be looking at on today. And as we look at Zoom webinar essentials, we're going to be understanding that there's so much we can do with these webinar essentials. I want to teach you how to set up, host, and run flawless events. That's what we want to look at. We want to master account setup. We want to show you how to engage audience management so that your audience is always engaged. And then I want to teach you how to have a seamless live delivery. And if you can get these tips down, I promise you, you can scale your real estate business because it's going to put you in front of so many more people than you're not in front of right now. And when you get in front of more people, it includes increasing your pipeline because more people means more opportunity to get their name, their email, and their phone number. So first of all, let me just kind of explain the difference between a webinar and a meeting, because sometimes people talk about the meetings, but they don't know about the webinars, or they think that they can try to have a webinar within a meeting, and it's possible. But there is a separation between the two, and you kind of want to know the difference. Webinars are presentation first. They're structured stage experience. It's about panelists. It's about speakers. Either you're going to be a speaker, you're going to play a video, you're going to share a screen, you're going to present. Your attendees are not there to talk. Not primarily. They're there to listen. It's almost like a lecture in a college, on a college campus. You're there to give one-way presentation, and it's a controlled audience. Now, they can speak, but they can't unmute on their own. You have to do that for them. This type of platform is solely built for scaling. If you want to scale your real estate business, that's what this platform is set up for. Now, meetings are different. Many of us are familiar with Zoom meetings, therefore collaboration first. You come, you still have speakers and video and screen sharing and chat, but everyone participates. Everyone is talking. Everyone is giving their insight. It's a two-way interaction. Open discussion is an ideal situation for teamwork. So you have to decide, which one do I want? What is it that I need? Webinars are built for controlled, scalable presentations. That's what you have to say. And I believe that if you're going to scale your business and you want to get to buyers, you want to get to sellers, you want to talk to investors, you want to deal with agent attraction, I think that looking at webinars is a great way to scale your business. I'm going to tell you about so many features about webinars so that you can understand the importance and the magnitude that they can add to your real estate business. And there's three phases of a flawless Zoom webinar. There's three phases that we want to talk about. You got to learn how to master three things: setup, engagement, and live delivery. If you can master those three things, you can succeed. The first thing is phase one, proper account setup. You're going to have to make sure, and we're going to talk about these things on today. You're going to have to make sure that you set the account up. If you don't have a team environment and you don't have an administrator that's going to be administrating everyone's webinars for you, you're going to have to make sure that you have a proper account set up. The second phase, you're going to have to make sure that you know how to engage your audience. You have to engage the attendees. You're going to discover that includes, first of all, registration. That includes making sure you publicize your webinar. That also includes what you speak about. And I'm going to go to that on my third point. But you have to make sure there's engagement. Because if there's no engagement, if you're not drawing anyone, then you're just giving an empty webinar. No, it has to have a great setup. A great setup is going to set the foundation. And then you start building on that foundation with engagement. And then lastly, you got to have a live delivery, and that's seamless. And not only does that include your ability to give a great lecture, a great webinar, but it also is your ability to control the things that's needed backstage. We're going to talk about various things and how there's a backstage to this. You ever been to the theater? And you know, in the theater, you have a stage manager and you have those that move the props on and off. And you have a curtain person and a timer for clock person. And you have so many parts. Well, webinars are the same way. Whether you're doing all of that yourself, it's not a difficult thing, but you have to understand that there's so many parts to it so that you can have the best experience, because the best live delivery you give is what's going to cause new leads to keep coming and coming and coming. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for an opportunity to ensure that the information you give is something that is wanted over and over, and all they have to do is just look at the link over and over again. Each phase, 1, 2, and 3, it removes the friction. There's a lot of friction that can happen when you're trying to put theater together, when you're trying to put a live event together, when you're trying to put a Zoom webinar together. There's a lot of friction that can take place. But if you master these 3 areas, these 3 phases, is going to improve the experience for those that attend. And that's what you're shooting for. I promise you, if the experience is priceless for them, not only will they be back for anything else you do, but they're going to tell more people about what they already saw. We do it all the time at the movies. We do it at the theater. We do it all the time. If we experience something great, it's almost like we have to tell someone else. And let me tell you, structure creates confidence. And confidence creates a better webinar. And that's what the purpose of today's Master Mind class is all about. I'm trying to give you the confidence to get out and start having webinars on a regular basis. Let's do it. Let's make it happen so that we can scale your business. Now, first thing, let's talk about the core setup. Let's talk about scheduling prerequisites, the things that's needed if you're going to get this webinar even off the ground. You know, that's where it starts. That's where I talk about a foundation. No need to talk about the walls and the roof and the ceilings and all of that stuff, putting in the elevator and the staircase. The first thing we have to talk about is the foundation. Here's the foundation. If you're going to build a webinar correctly, you have to do it before you hit the live button. And here are the things you need to know. First thing, you need to know about licensing. When you go on Zoom, Zoom offers various different packages. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at those in a while, but they may still have a free package where you can stay up there for about 45 minutes, and then they're going to boot you off after that. But there are professional packages. They have a pro, they have a business, and they have an enterprise. You have to have one of these packages, and they cost something per month, per year, but you have to have one of these packages if you're going to get what they call their webinar add-on. If you're going to get the webinar add-on, you're going to need one of the pro, business, or enterprise packages. That's the first thing you need to know if you're going to set this thing up right. The second thing you need to know, once you have a webinar add-on package, there's a schedule button. There's a schedule portion there. And you need to know, all you have to do is go into the Zoom web portal, go to the webinars, and then just click schedule a webinar. It's going to tell you and ask you about the time. It's going to ask you about the dates. It's going to ask you about various things. That's the third point. It's going to ask you to set up the time, May 28th or August 25th, or whatever the date you want to put in at whatever time. It could be an AM, it could be a PM. But this is the catch. Make sure you get the time zone correct, because of the fact you don't want to give a Pacific time zone if that's not where you are. You want the time zone to match where you are, unless you are specifically doing it for a particular group that's in a particular time zone and you don't want to confuse them. You know that you're 3 hours ahead, 3 hours behind. So then you set it for them, but you understand what's needed for you. But make sure you have the time and the date correctly. You got to get the license, set your schedule together, enter the date and the time, and then make sure you turn on your registration. And this is why. Because if you're going to go through all of this, and if you're going to, we'll talk about costs a little later, but if you're going to go and get the add-on, anytime it says add-on, usually it means there's an additional cost. So there's the cost of the license, and then there's the cost of the webinar add-on. If you're going to get an add-on, make sure you keep your registration button on. Why? Because that's what's going to give you names and email addresses. That's going to be your open door to collecting leads. That's the whole purpose of this. Yes, giving great information to those that desire it is a very good goal, a very good objective. Speaking something about real estate in whatever area you decide to speak about, that's noble. But for us and for what you're trying to do, we're trying to scale. You're trying to be a top producer. And as a top producer, I want you to know you got to keep the registration button on. It is so important that you get and keep the registration button on, because every person that signs up, they're going to have to give you their name in the email. You want that. Now, something else you can do when you have a webinar that's so great, you can invite panelists. You can invite other people. You can set up your webinar kind of like a podcast with many guest members. There's so many things you can do with your webinar, and all you have to do is type in their email address and hit add, and then they can come in right from wherever they are. They do not need to be in your same location. This is truly a virtual experience, and that's what makes it so nice. That's what makes it so important, because of the fact you can set up something that is clearly major. And when you set it up, it will take you in front of several different people that other types of marketing will not take you in front of, not at the pace that this can take you in front of. All right. So let's talk about configuring some of the engagement tools. Part of setting up a webinar is understanding that you must keep the attendees focused and involved. If your folks are not focused, if they're not involved, they're going to get tired. They're going to get bored. If you're not saying anything that they don't know, or if you're not reiterating something that they already know, but they understand that they haven't been doing it, if it's not something that's fresh to them, it's going to cause them to wane. You don't want that. We want to set up some things to keep them engaged. So let's talk about some engagement tools for your webinar. I'm excited because I can't wait to see your webinars. I can't wait to see what you're going to be doing. And you ought to right now already be thinking about the subject matter. I'm not talking about subject matter on today. I can do that another video. But subject matter you ought to be thinking about, because once you get the webinar essentials together, you're going to be off to the races. All right, first thing, make sure you enable your Q&A. You want it to be set up that your attendees, they can submit questions. and you want to be able to view questions in real time, whether you're doing this thing by yourself or whether you have someone else that comes in to filter all of your questions for you. I've been in all types of webinars where the actual person that was the host that was leading the webinar, they was taking questions at the same time as they was going through their presentation. Then I've been in some where they held the questions to the very end. Then I've been in some where they had someone else assisting them, a co-host that was answering the questions as they came in at that moment via the chat. Or once again, they categorized and collected all of the questions for the main host. And then at the end of the presentation, they decided to answer the questions at that time. You can decide. You have full control over your webinar. You can answer the question live, or you can answer the question privately. You can go straight to the audience and answer, or you can go straight to the individual that asked and answer. It's set up for you to have full control over your webinar. Something else you can set up. You can set up polls and quizzes. Depending on what you're talking about, you may want to set up a poll so that you can get statistics and get an understanding of the people that's in the audience. You want to know what they're thinking. How many people feel that this is a buyer's market? How many people feel that EXP is the best brokerage because that's where the pros go to grow? You can take polls. You can kind of quiz them. All right, we dealt with 3 points in the last session. Can anybody give us those 3 points? And then you can give multiple choices. You can set up, and you can do this during breaks, or you can do this during the same time you're giving your lecture or your webinar, and it will show the results and drive engagement. That's what's going to keep people into it. Because if you ask an engaging question, a provocative question, some questions you want to know the answer to. You want to know what people are thinking, especially if you know that there's a lot of opinions, because when you know what others are thinking, it causes you to feel like, okay, I had a question about that. I was wondering if I was in the majority or not. And it keeps you looking at the screen. That's what you want. You want people 24/7, the whole time that your webinar is taking place. You want their eyes fixed on the screen. That's what you can do on a regular. Something else you can do is you can just set up a chat setting. And you can do it in different ways. You can set it up where everyone can participate, and they can chat, and they can send their questions, and they can say their comments, and everyone can see it. They call that high interaction. It happens regular, and that's what it's almost like a default for most Zooms, whether it's meetings or webinars. But then you can set the control to just your host, your panelists, so everyone doesn't see the chat. So if you have an audience member that they want to say something, it's not seen by the other attendees. It's only seen by the host, the co-host, or the panelists. That allows more control. You could be talking about, if this wasn't real estate, you could be talking about a more confidential subject matter, but it works so that you can have control over your session. And that's what this thing is about. Understanding how to master this so that you can have the greatest control over your sessions. Because attendees, since they can't freely unmute, everything is designed on purpose. That has to be on purpose. If you know that there's going to be a moment within your presentation that you want people to interact, you got to have something ready so that you can unmute all. And then once you complete, you can go back to mute. You have to plan. That's the one thing about webinars. Let me pause and just say before we go on, this is a chess game. This is not checkers. Zoom meetings, you can consider that checkers, but this is chess. You have to plan. You have to think ahead. You have to know what it is you want. How many questions do you want to put out and answer? And how are you going to filter and answer the questions that come in? Are you going to allow them to ask as you're presenting? Or how is that going to take place? What are your quizzes are going to be about? What questions are you going to ask? What poll questions are you going to ask? Will there be high interaction chat, or will there only be host and panelist chat? You have to take time to plan. But if you take the time to plan, you can succeed. This will become a major tool. And I believe that even if your presentation skills are not at the highest that they should be, if they're not A plus, if they're not 100, if you have a strong webinar setup, engagement, and delivery, you can still grow, because as your setup is set up perfectly, your presentation will grow into it. I hear someone say just the other day, don't wait for perfection. No, progress. Progress on a regular basis. Learn how to do webinars and then start doing them. And I promise you, each time you do one, you'll get better and better and better over and over again. Now, let's talk about some best practices for live hosting, because this is live. I don't know if you watch television. I still look at SNL. I'm a SNL type of guy, Saturday Night Live, and they are a live show. So you get to see folks out of character. You get to see them forget their lines. It's live. Because you have to be on point when it's live. Well, two things. There's two parts. You have a backstage and you have a live stage. The backstage is where you can prepare, where you can test, where you can make changes. You can call audibles for those that are football fans. And then the live stage is where you actually engage and you actually deliver. You want to become a master of both, because the motto is this: test first, then go live with confidence. Don't try to wing it. Test it first. Call your panelists in. What do they call it in theater? They call it a dress rehearsal. What do they call it for weddings? They call it a rehearsal dinner. But either way, you're rehearsing. What do they call it in boxing? Sparring. Why? Because you're practicing. You're rehearsing. You want to ensure that your backstage is together. Test that thing first, so that when you go live, you know you've done everything that you need to do. Because what you do backstage, never forget this point, it's going to determine what the audience experience live. Whatever you do backstage, if you do nothing, it might not look too great on the live stage. If you don't test the microphones, if you don't check the batteries, if you don't make sure that everything is together, it might not be exactly. And when you begin to draw more and more people, it may start slow. Everything at times starts slow. But when you draw more and more people, you don't want to take the chance of looking unprofessional. Not because you are unprofessional, but just because you just didn't take the time to prepare and test backstage. So let me give you a few things that will help you and give you some best practices that will help you get through this. First of all, make sure you enable the practice session. Don't skip this. During the practice session, you get to test the audio. You get to test the video. If you're going to play any type of video, you get to make sure you're going to share your screen. You test that. You make sure that it's going to pop up and which one you need to grab so that it's done. So it can take place without waiting too long. It can be an immediate transition. I'll say this more than once. Let me say it once right here. If you're going to share your screen, don't share your whole desktop. Just share the actual area, the window, if it's a PowerPoint, if it's a PDF, Adobe presentation, whatever it is, if it's an Excel spreadsheet, just share that window. So then there's no chance where, you never know what you may have on your desktop, or some things might be confidential, may not need to be seen. You want to just show what needs to be seen. So you do that during your practice session. Next thing, you click start webinar. That's when you begin to open the doors. That's when you unlock the door. You've seen restaurants, man. You ever been to a restaurant and you get there early and you just have to wait outside for that last 5 minutes, and then the person comes and they unlock the door, and then everybody begins to rush in? Well, that's what you want. You want to hit that start webinar and know that there's a crowd waiting to come in, but there's a specific button that you're going to hit to start your webinar. Then I've already talked about it. You need to make sure that you check out your share screen. If there's something you're going to start with, make sure it's ready. I'll say it for the second time now. And make sure you select the actual application window. Don't select your desktop. Don't just say everything. No, be very specific on the window you select when you get ready to share your screen in these types of environments. Yeah, if you're going to just do it and you're on the phone and you're doing a Zoom meeting with someone and it's quicker to do that because you may be going back and forth, that's understandable. But these are just a step higher. These are what I would call more professional. So you want to look more polished. You want to make sure that you're on top of your game, and you can do it. If you're going to share your sound, like if you have a video, if you have something that has sound to it, make sure you cut that on. Because how many times have you seen webinars or Zoom meetings or different other types of meetings where they start the video, but you don't hear no sound? It goes silent. You don't want that. How do you protect yourself? Backstage, you prepare and you test. You go through a practice session. You make sure you don't change anything. Usually with the theater and various live concerts and events, they say, all right, we're going to put this in place. Nobody touch anything. Tomorrow when we get here and we start, everything should be in place. Or if they come in about an hour or two earlier, they'll set it up and then they keep it right in place. The last thing, make sure you stay on top of your record, because if this is a session that you're going to be recording, you definitely want to make sure that it's set up. You want to make sure that everything is the way that it needs to be. You don't want to get through the whole presentation and then discover that you did not click on the record button. That could be kind of discouraging. That can be kind of disappointing because of the fact you're expecting that you was recording and you're not. You go through 45 minutes, you go through 60 minutes just to find out that if you're going to show it again, you're going to have to do it again. You won't take advantage. Now, one thing about the webinar add-ons is that there's a feature you can get, and it's part of it, that allows you to take your live session, the one you just recorded, and to replay it in a live environment as often as you want. So if you get a good take on one live session on a subject matter, you really don't have to repeat that subject matter, especially if there's no indications of time or illustrations that are no longer relevant. But if it's timeless and if it's relevant, you can save yourself recording that session again, and you can play that as a live. The audience will not know that it's not live. They will see you up as being live. And then if you want to be still in the webinar, you can filter questions. You can talk off after or before the actual recorded webinar. That's why it's so important to record so that you can have an index, a file of all of your recordings. Because if you don't have to record the same material over and over again, it opens up time for what? It opens up time for you to record new material. So now you have every X day, every Tuesday, you have a recording for first-time home buyers, if that's your niche. Then every Thursday, you have a recording for those that's looking to list, if that's your niche. Then every Friday, you have a recording of those that are considering EXP, because that's where the pros go to grow. You have a recording of it. You don't have to do that one again. You could work on part 2, part 3 to that recording, but you can carry out the same recording over and over until you're ready to freshen it up. Bottom line, down at the bottom, you're in control. Your audience stays engaged. When you set these hosts up, this panel, this control panel, I can guarantee you, your audience will stay engaged. It is so important that you understand that if you set it up right, and of course, I'm assuming you're going to come with great material. I'm assuming that you're going to come with subject matter. And there's so much subject matter in this industry we find ourselves in to come with. So if you come with subject matter and you set it up using the webinar host control panel, you're going to keep your audience engaged. You can guarantee that. You don't have to wonder. You can do that. Now, let's talk about registration, recording, and repurposing. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how you can turn every webinar into a lead capture and content engine. I was talking a little bit about that just a moment ago, but let's talk about it right now. You can turn every webinar. If you do one webinar today, that webinar can still be repurposed and turned into still a lead capturing device, even though you're not doing that same webinar again. That's the greatness about Zoom webinars. That's the greatness of doing webinars because of that reason. It will continue, if you set it up right, correctly, it will continue to bring you new leads over and over and over again. And that's what you want. First thing, the registration captures verified names and email addresses. One thing that Zoom does is you have to be signed into your Zoom account. So it's going to catch verified contacts, their names and their emails. You don't have to worry about too many bogus things because they have to have a Zoom account. Secondly, your live webinar is going to become an opportunity to create warm prospects. You know, they may be cold when they show up. Say you start at 10, but by time 10:45 comes, they're going to warm up. You ever had to cook something that was cold before you put it on the oven, and then over time, as they listen to you and they listen to your education and how your expertise shows in what you're discussing to them, they're going to warm up. By the end of your webinar, whether it's 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, by the end of your webinar, that which was cold will now be warm. And they're warm enough for you to follow up. And now when you follow up with them, you're not making a cold call. You're not sending a cold email. You're not sending a cold text. They recognize who you are. Oh, that's them from the webinar. And they did a great job. I enjoyed that. The material they brought, it had great substance to it. The next thing, this is what I was talking about earlier. By recording to the cloud, you can replay your live webinar over and over again. Say some folks registered, but they wasn't able to show. So even though you got their name and their email, their contact, they still didn't show. Well, what you do, just send them the link to the video. They didn't miss it. You send them the link to it. And also you take that same video recording and you repurpose it, as I've already said, for other future webinars. Set it up once a week, advertise it, and just let people come. And sometimes you get the same people that will come and they may say, oh, okay, this is a replay. But everybody else that's new, they'll be seeing it for what? The first time. That's what's going to bring you more and more new leads over and over again. You can also repurpose these webinar videos into webinar clips. You can chop them up. You could have, 15 seconds, 45 seconds, 60 seconds. For social media, sometimes it go as long as 3 minutes, depending on what platform you want to put them on. But you can kind of chop them up and set them up for social media. Set you up some reels, YouTube shorts, and TikTok videos. Set you up some things where even on LinkedIn, they have videos that you can have. Set you up some content to continue to help build your authority. Also, you can send the link out if you have a CMA. If you have something that you want to send it out and you got a mailing, guess what? You can send it out to them. You can send it out on a regular basis and say, hey, you missed the last webinar. I'm going to send you the link. Check it out. However, I have another one coming up next week, and that will be your second webinar. That will be your 15th, your 100th webinar that you will be able to share with them. And as you do that, what's going to take place is you're going to create a follow-up system where you can nurture. You can reach out to your leads and you stay on top of them because now they see you as an authority. They see you as someone that understands the subject matter that you're talking about. And if the subject matter that you're talking about, that is something that is beneficial to them, important to them, you've already reached them. One event can create several marketing assets. One webinar can carry you further than you might be thinking. If you think that a webinar on a particular day for 1 hour, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, that's it. When you reach the end, you're missing the whole point of setting up Zoom webinars because they can just carry you week after week. For some guys, man, and some folks, they have videos that they did and it has carried them year after year. For some that became knowledgeable of this game, is what I'll call it, early on, they're into decades. They're into decades, and it's still carrying them right now. Sometimes you go on YouTube because you can always upload your videos to YouTube. You go to YouTube and you see people with just an outrageous number of views. They wasn't overnight. It's just they've been there, and it continues to carry them. And that's why you want to get material out, because you want it to carry you. You want it to take you where you need it to take you. Now, as agents, let me give you 5 powerful benefits, and then I'm going to wind down. Let me give you 5 powerful benefits. This is why I'm talking to you about Zoom webinar basics, the essentials, because I'm trying to help you become a top producer. This is the agent's blueprint. And part of the blueprint is having webinars regularly, on a regular basis, working diligently to scale your growth. Webinars are one of the top ways to scale your growth. Let me give you 5 reasons. First reason, it leverages time like no other. Just imagine if you market it right, you can educate 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people in 1 hour. That's how many people you can touch in 1 hour. If you're just getting started, if you get five, that's five more than you was touching at one time, giving a buyer's consult, giving a listing consult, talking about a subject matter. Then as you increase, as you move forward, that's where you discover I'm touching so many people in so little time. Second thing, instant authority building. A Zoom webinar is almost like when you hear people say, you wrote a book? You know how there was a time, man, that books gave authority. Well, webinars, podcasts, especially those that follow the basics that have been taught today, they give authority. When you see a podcast that is properly set up, it gives authority to the host, and it gives credibility not only to the host, but to the guests. Same thing. The panelists that will come on your webinar is going to give authority. You want to be seen as an authority. Third is a passive lead generator. It's just not a hard thing to put out. You know, you market your first live webinar for that subject matter, and then that creates leads, but then you put it on autopilot. You advertise that you do it every week or whenever, and you just get new and new people, and you have it already on autopilot where they sign up, and at the time that they sign up, guess what happens? You come on, and it just goes and goes and goes, and then you can decide whether you want to, even if you're not there, you can decide whether or not you want to be there to answer the Q&A. What some guys have done is they say, hey, time has run out. Send me and put all of your chats into the chat box and send me your questions, or you can send me emails with your questions, and I'll be sure to get back in touch with you. You're not even there. Now you're just running on autopilot, but just make sure that after each recording, you go and you check the chat to see if there was any questions, who the questions come from, and you can get back in touch with those people individually with those questions. That also adds another level of authority and an open door to take a warm lead into a hot lead, because now you're talking to them directly one-on-one on their subject matter. Number 4, it overcomes geographic limits. When you do a webinar, man, you're virtual. You're all over the internet. You're everywhere. You're not stuck to one city. You're not stuck to one state. Whoever has the internet, no matter what country they're in, if you have marketed, so, go to the great places, TikTok and social, Facebook, various places, and they sign in, they see you. There's no limits. There's no city lines that you have to concern yourself with. That's awesome. I know for a fact, as one that do a large marketing campaign just regularly, I understand, because you get buyers and sellers and relocating clients that you would never get by being locally minded only. You have to want to cross lines. That's a great benefit. The last benefit, I said it several times, you get to reuse this webinar over and over and over again. So that's why when you get ready to plan your subject matter, make sure you plan it, and don't put any time constraints on it. Don't, unless you don't want to use it again, or you just want to use it at a certain time of the year. Don't put anything that can set the timing. Say a holiday out, happy this, enjoy. No, just keep it very general, very neutral. So then that thing can play any day of the week, 52 weeks a year. You can let that play, and it will bring you passive lead generation to your email, to your pipeline. It will bring it directly to you. And there's no extra charge. You already have the license with Zoom. You already have the add-on for the webinar. Everything else would just come to you. That's a great benefit. 3 words: educate, engage, convert. That's what you can do. If you come with the mindset to educate, and you make sure that whatever you're educating them on, it's engaging, I can guarantee your business will scale because you're going to be converting. You're going to convert some leads. This is well established. And this is not only how you build your webinar platform, but this is also how you build your YouTube platform, which will also bring you into action and dialogue with possible lead sources. Let me close by just reviewing everything very briefly. This is your checklist if you want to launch a Zoom webinar. 6 steps, very easy, very quickly. Make sure you have a license, Pro, Business, Enterprise. And then make sure you get the webinar add-on. I said I'll talk about pricing. Let's talk about it right here. Sometimes it starts at about $100 a month for up to about 100 people. So you can't have more than 100 people. That's a great place to start sometimes because of the fact, guess what? You might not have that platform anyway. But then it goes up to 300, goes up to 400. When you go up to 250 people, 500 people, and anything higher, it's a great, great platform. So confirm that you have a license and the add-on. Next, schedule your webinar. Get your registration setting on so that you can have it. Now, I'm talking about the action steps to make the webinar great. Somewhere in the midst of all of this, you do have to, I just want to give a side note, come up with some engaging material for your webinar. I'm talking about the mechanics. I'm talking about the technicalities. But you have to make sure before you hit that schedule, you know what you're going to be talking about and you have a full understanding about what you're going to be talking about. You can invite panelists. If you don't want to just talk the whole time, you may not have 45 minutes of conversation, an hour. Invite some panelists to come in. Treat it like a podcast. Make sure you enable the practice session so everything can be tested and set up so you know that voice is good, sound, audio, video, share screen, everything. The panelists can sign in perfectly. Make sure it's all together. Then make sure you cut on your Q&A, all of the features that you need so that you can keep your crowd engaged, whether it's 1 or whether it's 1,000. You want to keep them engaged. Now, one thing about webinars that's different from meetings, this is a good point. Since I said 1 to 1,000, with webinars, those in attendance do not see the count of who's in the webinar. They don't see the count. So they don't know whether you're talking to one person, them, or whether you're talking to 1,000 people because they can't see who's in the webinar. So don't run your webinar as if you think they can see who's in the webinar and then talk and present to one person. No, talk and present to the masses that you see before you. Even if you don't see them in the little windows of people, make sure you see them in your mind as you give your presentation. So talk to them. Because if you talk small-minded, a little while back we talked about thinking bigger. If you talk small-minded, it's going to be picked up. Well, for the one person that's hitting, just give your presentation with strength, energy, engagement, confidence. Give the strongest presentation you can and thank the crowd. I'm so glad all of you showed up today. This is going to be great. I'll see you for my next one. All of you can be one. All of you can be 10,000. Make sure you present in a very positive way. Number 5, I say it again, test everything. Test, test, test. Check your batteries. Check everything. Make sure everything is up to par so that you can become the local expert that someone is waiting for. There's several experts in the world, in the universe, but there's a crowd of people, wherever they are, that's waiting on you. And when you step out, be the expert that you can be, you know you are, and you should be. This is your time, and you can do it. Last point, and then I'm done. Go live with the confidence you see coming off of me. Deliver value. And then once you deliver the value, follow up with a replay link. And then constantly follow up with those now warm leads. Follow up with them. And watch that as you keep doing your webinars, as you keep practicing these essential things of Zoom webinars, you're going to notice that your leads are going to turn to converts. Set up well, host smoothly, follow up fast, and I promise you, you'll scale your business. That's all I got for today. See you next time.